their beliefs are all so similar with different gods. Also, like you said, breeding with humans. There's always,
that's
even
always
like even the alien abductions, whether it's elves, whatever it is, they're always trying to cross breed with humans.
Always.
Even Epstein had breeding programs at Zorro Ranch. And this is like real. It's all through the emails. And he's emailing top scientists. It's not random people about bringing back Neanderthal babies, sequencing the genome from the guy who had got a Neanderthal bone. Like there's all kinds of, I mean, I've looked straight through the files myself. I'm not like, looking at what other people are saying on Twitter. This is all over the Epstein files. But back to like I was saying, this whole crossbreeding with humans is in pretty much every culture.
I am an unapologetic Bitcoin maximalist. Crypto, take it or leave it. I'm personally not a fan. That's your decision. Bitcoin is different. I believe it's moral money. I have a strong moral conviction. It's God's money. It's outside of the fiat corrupt currency system. It is finite, so it hedges against inflation. What I don't want to do is trade Bitcoin and sell at a loss out of fear in the next 3 to 6 months if the bear market goes lower. I'm not interested in trading Bitcoin on Coinbase or Moomoo or Robinhood. I want to purchase Bitcoin for the long haul, 20, 30, 40 years, and skip out on the capital gains at the end of the day. That's where I Trust Capital comes into the equation. Right now, you can have a free $100 added to your account if you use our link in the show notes below. It's itrustcapital.com/go/NXR Studios.
Radical Christian nationalist pastor, Joel Webbon.
Joel Webbon? I'm going to talk about Joel Webbon today.
Joel Webbon has been excellent.
All right, Jake Shields, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
What are you known for? You fight?
That's my traditional, fighter. I'm definitely way more known for a fighter still, but it's funny, a lot of new people that are on Twitter and stuff, they see me as a political guy, and I am actually getting a lot more known for that too, which is kind of weird. Traditionally, I was on Twitter, it was like 95% people know me from fighting. Now it's probably like 65 and people from political because, I had a great fighting career, won 5 world titles. I was, Strikeforce champ, which is back when the show was massive on CBS and, CBS and Showtime. You fought for the UFC title. So I had a great fighting career. Then I retired. I was trying to live a nice, peaceful life. And then the government came and shut the country down during COVID. Right. So I turned radical, I guess, as they would say.
Right. Yeah. 2020 radicalized a lot of guys, many such cases. So would you define, I understand that a lot of the argument these days is shifting from less of the left versus right, and there's more, there's just a lot of other issues. Horseshoe theory is kind of a thing. There's a lot going on. But if we use a left-right paradigm, just to start the conversation, would you be more on the left or on the right politically?
Well, more on the right, but it gets complex. Like I have a hard time in that paradigm. I think there are real issues in it. And there was these crazy leftists that they've backed off a little bit. Those complete lunatics trying to say our kids could be women. Right. Those are complete psychopaths. But then you're seeing complete psychopaths on the right now too, like anything for Israel, the war for Israel. So I guess overall I lean more right, but on some issues, like medical is one I've switched my position. I think there should be a free universal health care for everyone. We also should have private hospitals, but there should be something basic. Mm-hmm. I think the one that really got me is when I had to donate to my kids' cancer charity. My friend had, they didn't have a lot of money and their kid had cancer and they couldn't pay for the treatments. And that was just like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the economic front is going to, that's going to become an incredibly complex conversation that a lot of your old school right, especially like libertarian guys are like that's socialism. And I'm not a socialist. I'm not a huge fan, but what do you do if AI actually takes off and half of the country is unemployed? Do they just starve?
Yeah, I've been worrying about this lately. I think this is going to be a big problem. I think a lot of people are going to lose their jobs and competent people even, a lot of good jobs. So it's not
it's one thing when you're drugged out, or you're lazy, you're not willing to work. The Bible says if you don't work, you don't eat. But that's not talking about a quadriplegic who got hit by a truck. That's talking about somebody, there's a moral issue. They're not willing to work. What do you do if half of the country is willing to work? They actually have some kind of skills, but it's all been replaced. Truck drivers replaced by FSD, all these different.
So at that point, it's like, do you let half the country starve? Or do you actually have to start having some nuanced, complex conversations?
You have to like add a little socialism, like I said, and I'm not huge on that typically, like you say, but it's the reality. You can't just let these people starve. It's going to cause unrest. Plus, I have humanity. I believe in helping people. You know,
Right.
I grew up around a lot of like poor, lazy, welfare people that are on drugs. They're, you know, their kids aren't eating because they're like trading their food stamps for drug money. So I've seen that. I've seen like, I'm not that, you know, sorrowful for a lot of these people, but like you said, it's going to be, I know people now that are intelligent looking for jobs and they're struggling, like taking less money, like telling me they'll hire me. And it's like, hey, I can only afford to pay this, way less than they should be paying. And they're like, I'll take it. It's just like the market's not good. There's like a lot of people with really good job skills looking for jobs and they're willing to take whatever.
Yes, absolutely. So I feel like economically, I think I'm seeing a convergence of not everybody, but some individuals on the right, some individuals on the left, some of this horseshoe theory, you know, kind of starting to share some things in common on Israel. That's a big one. We can talk about that in a moment, but same thing. There's some people on the right, you know, who are anti-Zionist, aware of, you know, some of the things that are going on. And so there's some convergence between left and right, some of the individuals on Israel. The big chasm that remains between the left and the right is still some of the moral issues. It's the LGBT mafia, as I like to refer to it, abortion. That would be a big one. And then another one I think is just immigration. I think the left still kind of wants infinity immigration and is unwilling to acknowledge. It's like, oh, Haitians, Somalians, Americans, same thing, you know, whereas the right kind of has, let's be honest, like a lot of the right, you know, boomer conservatives go to sleep every night consoling themselves, you know, even though they're destroying the economy, they're like, but at least I'm not a racist, you know? So like, so there's some people on the right that kind of hold to the blank slate-ism, that everybody's just a fungible, interchangeable widget. But I think there's at least a growing contingency on the right that doesn't hate anyone, but would say, yeah, the different people are different.
Yeah.
There's distinctions, you know, and do you know anybody on the left would be like a race realist? Anybody?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. They're rare, but these conversations we need to have, and neither one of us are hateful at all towards other races.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it's realistic to kick every other race out of this country either. It's not a realistic argument, but we should stop. I would like America to stay mostly white, and we've already kind of passed.
That's what I say. I'm like, yeah, majority white, and people are like, well, why? It's like, because it's our history, it's our heritage, even today, presently, it's still 59% white. Yeah. If it doesn't stay majority white, because it currently is, that means people are being replaced. That's not a good thing.
No.
So majority white, I think, is a perfectly reasonable argument. And I'm not of the persuasion that, you know, like Clarence Thomas has to go back to Africa.
That's
like
not realistic.
That's, you know, I know guys who will say that. And I'm like, guys, that's ridiculous. Like Clarence Thomas, I'm grateful for him. And so heritage blacks would remain, you know, there would be some Hispanics that helped fight in the Alamo who would remain, good friends, people that I love. But I would make a pretty sound argument for one, no more immigration from non-Western countries moving forward. And then going back, I would like to go back to probably the Hart-Celler Act. Like anybody who's come in the last 60 years, I'm not saying wholesale, but each of those cases, I would want to revisit them. Some of them might get to stay because they've been upstanding citizens.
Depending on what they've done. That makes sense. Right. If they've been accomplished great citizens. Yeah. All illegal.
They've assimilated. They speak fluent English. They love the country.
Yeah.
But I feel like pretty much everyone back to 1965. I'm not saying back to the 1600s, like descendants of slaves, but anyone they've only been here for 60 years since the Hart-Celler Act, and they still haven't assimilated.
I think you need to look and see what they did. Like you said, if they've been huge patriotic Americans, not getting arrested, not like, you know, speaking English, building businesses, then they could stay. But if they haven't, if they're on government assistance, being negative, then why would we let them stay?
Exactly. So, I appreciate that. So I think we're on the same page in terms of like immigration, those kinds of things. And I think that's helpful for people because sometimes they hear a guy like you or a guy like me and they're like, you know, you're just a white nationalist. You want America to be exclusively white.
White nationalist.
And I'm like, here's the deal. I make no apology. It's not just okay to be white. It's good to be white. Yeah. God made me white. White people have done incredible things. They built the world. Praise God. I love white people. My kids are white. I am pro-white. But that doesn't mean that I think that no non-white person can be in America.
Yeah, no, we're the same. Like, it's okay to be white, which the ADL would call that hate speech.
Correct.
But I think some of these other people, some of my best friends aren't white, and they're proud Americans, and they also don't want to bring a bunch of immigrants over here.
Yes.
And I've actually talked to a few of these white nationalists because they help open my mind up, because I didn't realize the problem of the declining white people in every Western country, and that's why they don't want to talk to these guys. Like when I talked to David Duke, I think it was the first interview he'd done in like 10 years because no one would talk to him. Thanks for watching Fight Back Podcast. If you like the show, like, subscribe, or share the video. There's also donation links in the descriptions. As many of you guys know, I run a free speech podcast. That comes as a price. It's being demonetized everywhere. So one way to support the podcast is to buy your books from AntelopeHillPublishing.com. Today's selection is The Trans-Industrial Complex. This book covers the money-making machine of the trans industries and shows it's not to help people, but to make money and get rich. So again, if you want to support the podcast, go to AntelopeHillPublishing.com and be sure to use promo code FIGHTBACK. That'll save you money and support me. Thank you.
I saw him on the Hodge Twins. Did you beat the Hodge Twins too?
I set that up for them, actually.
Okay.
They might have released theirs first, actually, but I set that up because they have a lot of those are proud Americans right there. They have a lot of balls, the Hodge Twins.
Yeah.
They had Nick Fuentes on.
Yeah, they did.
I set that up too because I didn't have a podcast yet, and I met Nick, and I realized how he'd been lied about, because I believed he was this terrible racist person. Right. I talked to him like, wow, like they took away your voice and then they just slandered you. How evil is that?
They did. Yeah, no, I mean, he was on a no-fly list. He was debanked, all those kinds of things. We did, as you know, we did a long series, and I've gotten to know him. And I mean, there's things I disagree with, like the way that he words things.
We clash sometimes. But
sometimes
I'm glad we're on good terms again.
Like, oh, Nick. But here's the deal. Like, one thing you have to realize with Nick is sometimes he actually means something, and I just disagree. But a lot of the times, people like the thing that people hate the most, like this clip that's notorious, it's gone uber viral, and they're like, that's why I don't like Nick. You have to keep in mind, like he is like an insanely good geopolitical commentator. Like 50% of the time. The other 50% of the time, he's a stand-up comedian.
Exactly. He's so funny.
So it's hard. You have to
miss his jokes sometimes.
Some of it is a joke. Now, some of it's not.
Yeah.
But
and even I got
some
angry
of
with the Epstein stuff making light of. But then I'm like, all right, I need to just realize I still don't like it, but he's being funny,
Yeah. So some of the stuff he said about the Epstein stuff, I'm like, dude.
Yeah,
this is not great, because it was right in the middle as we were coming out with our series, and people were like texting behind the scenes and they're like, did you see what Nick said? And I'm like, yeah, I can't control him. I don't know what to tell you.
He's not a guy you can control,
I wish he didn't. And then some of it I looked into, and it's like, okay, that time he was joking. This time he has this explanation. Okay, here's a clarification here. The one thing though that I wasn't able to have a disclaimer for is, okay, but he's still selling the quarter zips and making money,
the thing is, he dropped that sweatshirt right before all the new files came out, and pissed about. But then I think after he got in a fight, then if he pulled it back, it would like look bad on his thing. So that's why I realized, like, all right, I don't like it, but I'm just gonna let it go and still be friends with him. I'm not gonna let a friendship, someone that's been fighting for a decade before I have, ruin a friendship over a sweatshirt that I really don't like.
Right. Yeah. So I don't like the sweatshirt, but you're absolutely right. Nick was exercising courage on certain issues before I even knew what those issues were. And I appreciate that.
That's the conclusion I came to after, we did get a pretty bad fight, but then
I saw some of that. Yeah.
Dan Blazarian actually stepped in and mediated, and he's such a good person and always trying to stop division. I thought we'd gone too far to solve it, but then Dan's like, no, I want to get you guys on the phone. I'm like, okay, it's great to have friends like that make you step back and think sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Breaking news, you're fat. And so am I. Let's just be honest. I'm sitting here recording a commercial, practically spilling out of my chair. We're not energetic. We're not masculine. We're not as healthy as we should be. We're men, right? You're a husband. You're a father. We should be hard to kill. And let's be honest, we're making it easy on our enemies. So what's the problem? The problem is you're fat because you're hungry. And when you're hungry, you're eating snacks that's a bunch of goy slop. There's not a lot of good things in snack form in between meals. As a man, we need raw milk, eggs, beef. Those are the things, but it's hard to find them at 9:30 in the morning when I feel like I'm ready like a hobbit for a second breakfast. So here's the deal. After long searching, I'm serious, I found a solution. Go to paleovalley.com.
paleovalley.com. I'll be honest, it's the most feminine coded website I've ever seen in my life. Tell your wife about it, she'll love it, but just skip through all the stuff, get to the beef sticks. Guys, I'm telling you, these beef sticks are wild. You've got teriyaki, you've got garlic summer sausage, you've got jalapeno, incredible flavors. It's all natural, grass-fed beef. It's something that satiates your hunger. It actually makes you feel full, but it's also healthy and it doesn't turn you into an overweight woman. That's not the goal. All right, so check out the beef sticks, paleovalley.com. Use my promo code. It's not just 5 or 10%, it's 15% off, guys. It's a deep discount and it lets the sponsor know that we sent you. It helps keep us in business. Paleovalley.com. Here's the promo. It's NXR26. Think like 2026, NXR26 for 15% off. Okay, so right versus left, I feel like I'm seeing some horseshoe theory that could pan out in the future on some economic issues. On Israel, I think the right is very pro-Zionist, but a lot of that's older people on the right, boomers. They won't be, and so I can see some horseshoe theory there. The big thing that I think still differentiates the two parties would be race, immigration, those kinds of things, and then abortion and LGBT. Kind of stuff.
Abortion's one that I used to always be reluctantly pro-choice, but then, at like 20, I got a girl pregnant in college and stuff, and everyone was just like, oh yeah, I think I was getting an abortion. And just the idea of killing my baby just disgusted me. It just felt like,
praise God,
I got ill at the thought of it, and then I had the baby, and then I slowly kind of transformed, realizing like, that's a life in there.
Yes.
From the second it's conceived, in my opinion. I used to not believe that. They say it's like a chunk of cells, and like, of course, this can be complex sometimes. People have no money, they're young, but to say it's a clump of cells, that's just disgusting and vile.
Yes, amen. That's so good to hear. So yeah, I think those are the big issues. It's the LGBT kind of sexual perversion stuff. It's the abortion thing. It's the immigration race thing. Those remain differences, but economically and in terms of like geopolitically, I'm starting to see a convergence. The question I want to ask you though is, you got the neocon, Israel first, MAGA, right. And the neocons and MAGA, I mean, what's the difference these days? It's hard to tell sometimes.
There's not really a difference anymore.
I love Trump, but it's been disappointing, He
disappointed me so bad. It's like, I didn't vote for him this last election, but I did the first two, and it's just been shameful.
Not great. Yep. So, but that's on its way out. It really seems like MAGA is kind of, I feel like they're going to get kind of slaughtered in the midterms. I mean, Rubio or Vance, maybe, but, so it seems as though MAGA may die with Trump. Neocon is kind of just barely hanging on, and I think that dies with the boomers. So this, whatever you want to call it, America only, America first, the new right. So I'm on the side, this is where you and I probably differ the most. You're very open to this, and I think respectful towards Christians.
Open-minded.
But I think the big difference between us is I would be staunchly Christian. So I define it as like the new Christian right. But putting that aside for a second, let's just say the new right that includes Christians, it includes non-Christians. With this emergence of the new right, someone, from Candace, Tucker, Nick, all that kind of, what do you think are the defining characteristics of the new right?
Well, that's complex, like you said, because there's kind of a wide umbrella. So the way I look at it, okay, for one issue, for example, Israel, I'll unite with everyone, including on the left. But if you say new right, it's clearly anti-Israel. It doesn't want these foreign wars, strongly against trans stuff, against, I would say probably against gay, definitely against pushing gay stuff to kids, probably against gay marriage. That's something, again, when that passed, I was living in San Francisco, I'm like, oh, it's fine. And then I saw the debauchery it led to.
Right.
You're like, oh, it's never enough for them.
It's not. No, it's like, hey, just let us live our lives. And then it's like, and clap, celebrate, love it, and we're going to be at your kid's school. And it's like, oh, okay, there it is. Okay.
Yeah, my oldest daughter went to school by San Francisco and ran up there, and just the stuff they would teach her. And then she would speak back to them, that she would get mad. The newspaper, she would write articles that would against it. They wouldn't publish them, just the way they were treated by the teachers and stuff. I wish I was young back then. I wish I'd been more involved and gone there and argued with the teachers. I wasn't really political and didn't quite realize how crazy it was. But thankfully, there was so many kids identifying as trans. People said this doesn't affect you. I'm like, yes, I see it. In these liberal areas, all these kids are identifying as trans, mostly girls. It's more, people don't realize there's a lot more girls that are suffering. They're going through like puberty and stuff, and they go, oh, I can just be trans.
Right. So defining characteristics of the new right is an anti-Zionism, Israel.
Anti-immigration, I would say too.
Definitely, you're right.
Anti-immigration, anti-Israel,
Would you say everyone on the new right would be not racist, but a racialist or race realist?
Yeah, but I think you could take in people that aren't whites, though. You still want them to be
correct. I don't mean they're all white,
yeah, but
they all, even if they're not white, they recognize, race is real. Like the Hodge twins are half white, half black, and they're like, of course, race is real.
Yeah, and I think lots of minorities are. Maybe it's just the friends I hang out with. Maybe I'm seeing also in the fight world too. Guys are a lot more. Never realized it being a fighter my whole life. You realize like how much more based these guys are.
Yeah,
I really realized it when COVID hit, and like the minorities are a lot more like no one's whining about race and stuff in a fight gym.
Right. Okay, so those are some of the defining characteristics. Now talking about the on the new right, there are Christians, there are non-Christians. What do you think? I'm curious, like from your perspective, who do you think's going to win out when it's all said and done? Because I look at some of these guys who it's like they have a very similar position to me. We get there from different paths, but some similar conclusions on Israel, some similar conclusions on nationalism, similar conclusions on immigration, all those kinds of things. But they are like, they don't like Christianity. They even would go so far as to say Christianity is a Jewish psyop to weaken the West.
There's a big push against that right now.
There is.
A lot of white people. I've talked to some of these guys. I'm trying to tell them, like, bro, you're not going the right approach. Just say he's not Jewish. Like, he's son of God. How is the son of God a Jew? This is like, I don't think the Bible ever says Mary's Jewish, does it?
It's genealogies are very complicated. You have Ruth, you have Rahab, you have different people in the genealogy of Christ that weren't Israelites. And then it gets into like, well, how do you define Jew? Does it mean Judean? Or is it just stand-in, synonymous for Hebrew? So to me, it's like, I know the guys who make the arguments about, the Jews were Edomites, or there's
I understand
this
the
subset.
argument, but I refuse to say Jesus is Jewish. I'm just not going to.
I don't have a problem with that. I think that's fine.
I'm just not going to say it. They can make the argument, but I'm not going to say Jesus is Jewish. It's
right.
Like,
yeah, that's fine. To me, it doesn't really matter. It's like, if Jesus is Jewish, fine, but in AD 70, Christ spiritually returned in judgment through the human agency of Titus and destroyed the temple, destroyed all Jerusalem. So if he was Jewish, he still came back and judged his own people, indicting them for their unbelief, their rejection of him, the fact that they shouted and demanded that he be crucified. So either way, it's like...
That's an excellent point.
Yeah, if you're going to say Jesus is Jewish and therefore Jews are special, it's like the whole New Testament basically tells us that Jews aren't special.
Yeah.
What matters is faith. Do you trust in Christ, whether Jew or Gentile? To me, it's a moot point.
I agree. I think they get too hung up on it, and but they do have a point though. There are the Christian Zionists that make that argument.
That's true.
So that's why I do understand their argument, and I try to talk to these guys and tell them, why don't you have a different approach of just being like taken, like you said, how he turned on them, he flipped the tables.
Right.
They're the ones that had him crucified. If you look at their religion, they think he's boiling in hell.
Correct.
They despise him. They spit on Christians. So clearly, he's not of these people. Correct.
Yep. Absolutely. So what do you think? Do you think the new right, will it be Christian, or do you think it'll just be anti-religious, just kind of more of a natural?
I think people need religion.
I think so.
I used to be atheist, and I realized how flawed of a thinking that is. Obviously, there's a God and a spirit world, but then it's like we also need something to unite us, to pull us together. And I don't think the paganism, whatever they're pushing, or atheism, and I'm not even trying to bash paganism. I mean, I think even like in the Bible, he says, worship no gods besides me. There are demons.
I think there are other gods. We could talk about that.
Exactly.
So I don't look at the pagans, and say like, you guys are retarded, Zeus, Poseidon. I think there are other gods.
It does say don't worship other gods besides me,
Correct.
right? Very clearly, that's kind of implying.
So you're talking to an unhinged Fortean fringe kind of guy. So like
I hear you say that.
Like
though.
I believe like this, the sons of God. Job refers to the sons of God. Genesis chapter 6. I believe that this is a reference to angels, the angels that chose to rebel against God and follow Lucifer in his rebellion. That they were cast down from heaven to earth. These are now fallen angels. I think they took the daughters of men, human wives. I believe in Nephilim. I believe in giants. The whole 9 yards. So in terms of other gods, like I think that Greek mythology, Roman, like all these other gods, whether it be Poseidon or whether it be Zeus or this, that, and the other, I think that they actually were real. And in a sense are real. Some of them now, I think, bound by the finished work of Christ in like demonic dungeons. But I believe that all of these gods of mythology were actually fallen angels, and some of them actually did procreate with human women. And then I think, like for example, like a figure of antiquity like Hercules. I think Hercules was a Nephilim, part God, fallen angel, and part human. So like literally human, like superhuman strength, but also could be killed. So I look at that and I'm like, I don't think that the Greeks and, all these people are just making it up.
Yeah.
I think we live in a spiritual world and it's real. All right, I'm going to cut straight to the chase. You can open a Moomoo account or a Robinhood account. You can trade virtually anything under the sun, and you can trade crypto. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay the capital gains. Or you could be forward-minded, thinking towards generational wealth, open up some kind of retirement account, and they'll let you purchase anything you want, except for all the things that are good and that actually have increasing value, like Bitcoin. Crypto's one thing, I get it. You can take it, you could leave it. Bitcoin is here to stay. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I make no apology. I believe it's moral money. It's finite, so it beats inflation, and it's aside from the fiat currency system. The question is, how do I buy Bitcoin without having to pay the capital gains tax at the end of the trade? You can only do it through one platform that I know of. That's iTrust Capital. And right now, you can open an account, get a free $100 added to that account by going to itrustcapital.com/go/NXR Studios. Again, that's itrustcapital.com/go/NXR Studios. You can find the link in the description for this episode below. Use it to collect your $100 today.
Yeah, something interesting the last few, I thought this was crazy a few years ago, but I've been looking at all the different religions, different time periods. Their beliefs are all so similar with different gods. Also, like you said, breeding with humans. There's always, even the alien abductions, whether it's elves, whatever it is, they're always trying to cross breed with humans.
Always.
Even Epstein had breeding programs at Zorro Ranch. And this is like real. It's all through the emails. And he's emailing top scientists. It's not random people about bringing back Neanderthal babies, sequencing the genome from the guy who had got a Neanderthal bone. Like there's all kinds of, I've looked straight through the files myself. I'm not like, looking at what other people are saying on Twitter. This is all over the Epstein files. But back to like I was saying, this whole crossbreeding with humans is in pretty much every culture. And there's so many similarities between the gods. And
why do you think, so I'm with you. It is. It's like every culture, whatever religious text they have, has some kind of framework for multiple gods, a supreme being, but multiple lower divine type figures, which in the Christian worldview would be angels, fallen angels. But in every single religious scheme, these like demonic deities attempt to procreate or some kind of genome sequence or whatever with people, tamper with it, pervert it. I'm curious your perspective. What's the motive? Why? Why do you think they were trying to do that?
That's what I don't know. It's just so bizarre. It makes no sense. You start seeing this stuff, and that's why I kept saying it can't be true. It can't be true. But then you just see the same thing over and over. And even you said it was in the Bible with the Nephilim, right? I didn't even know that until someone told me that a couple weeks ago. I'm like, oh, it's even in the Bible.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, because I've been seeing it with the aliens. I saw it like 10 different places of this crossbreeding with humans.
Yes.
And I don't know why they would need our DNA, but they must somehow to survive, or maybe we're made in the image of God, or like.
That's what I think. I think it's inspired by demonic forces, and I think it's to corrupt the image of God. I really do. And I think, pre-incarnation of Christ, before he, took on flesh, was born of the Virgin Mary, I think like Genesis 6, for instance, and then you see another reference in the book of Numbers. So you see before the flood, before Noah's flood, and then after. So it seems as though it's an incursion, maybe a single fall of angels to earth, but two different attempts to procreate with human women. But in both instances, it seems as though the effort was to corrupt the image of God, to pervert the genealogy, the line of men, lineage, in order to try to cut off at the head preemptively the line of Christ, the Messiah. So when you think of like Genesis chapter 3 in the garden, when Adam eats of the fruit, and sins against God, and he comes, God comes in the garden, walking in the garden. Adam, where are you? And he curses the serpent, and then he curses the woman. Your childbearing pains will be greatly intensified. Also, your desire will be for your husband. That's not romantic. It means you're going to want to rule over your husband, but he's been appointed as authority over you. So part of the curse, I think, is feminism. And then he says to the man, curses the ground because of you. But in all that, he says to the woman, he says, I'll put enmity between your offspring and the serpent will strike his heel. So one of your seeds, offspring, will be special, unique, and the serpent will strike his heel, but he will crush your head. So I think that like the serpent was there that day as God is announcing these judgments. He knows God's plan, and he knows literally from the mouth of God that from this woman eventually will come a descendant that will be the final demise of Satan. And so I think that all along he was like, how can I corrupt the lineage? How can I somehow, because there's an offspring that's coming that's going to crush my head. So how can, fallen angels sleep with all those chicks, or what,
so like wanted to kill the DNA or
I think so.
Breed it down. No, that's definitely a possibility. And you mentioned the serpent. I think the serpent, that's all over the world too. The Aztecs sacrificed to like a winged serpent. It's like in Turkey, in the oldest place they just discovered, what's it called? Gillespie. They found this like 12,000-year-old city. There's like serpents all on the rocks. It's just like the serpent. So usually like a dark side, like the whole reptile thing. Always. It's almost like, David Icke, his theory is almost similar to the religious theory, but it's just with like the reptilians and this, but it's not that different, like shape-shifting. Right. You could take the same theory and put it in a religious context and it still could hold.
Right. Okay, so here's one question just out of curiosity, because whenever I talk to somebody who's not a Christian, I'm always curious, like their purview of what they think Christianity is. And so obviously, I mean, that's a massive topic and there's a million different things. But if I was to ask you, and I'll just do it just for kicks and giggles, I'd like to know your answer. What do you think the gospel is?
I guess with Christianity, I get torn because, well, now I'm becoming more pro-Christian, but I was anti-Christian before because some of these churches I didn't like, the Vatican, the terrible things they've done to children. There's a church in San Francisco where I used to live that had like a trans flag on it. I see disgusting stuff like that, but then I realized you don't need a church between you and God, that you yourself can take up. And you don't need the Old Testament as much as, like Jesus' teaching, which are almost all good. Because there's things in the Old Testament I would see with like, I haven't read it, but things I would see in there that I didn't like. Then you see Jesus' teachings and you're like, oh, this is much better. And even like, I always thought he was like a pacifist, but then when he flipped the tables and made the whip, like I didn't know that. He's a lot more relatable. It's like when he can have fury when it's needed too.
Right. Yeah. No, Jesus was masculine. He was not an effeminate pacifist. That's
what he's been made out to be.
Yeah. No, that is how he's made out to be. And I think one thing that's really important, you were, bifurcating the Old Testament and the teachings of Jesus. I think one thing, and a lot of people do that, a lot of Christians do that. But I think one thing that's important is that, with the finished work of Christ, we have the inauguration of the new covenant, and the new covenant is new. So there's a distinction to be made. But then as you look at, Jesus is the fulfillment of all the Old Testament. He even says, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And so a lot of the Old Testament, one of the things that's difficult to come to terms with, but I think vital, is that the Old Testament, every single bit of it is good. And wherever we're like, man, that seems harsh, or that seems intense, or it's a user error, not the software. It's us. Like I look at like Sodom. It's like, okay, God rains down fire and destroys this whole city. But then, I don't know, in 2026, I look at San Francisco and I'm like, I get it. You know,
I lived in San Francisco.
There's, you know,
you leave and then you go back and you don't realize just the filth you were living in. I went back and it's like, oh my God, just disgusting. You know, the homeless, people doing drugs on the street, shooting up. And they have like gay pride parades, people having sex in the streets.
Correct.
When I came home, children. People are having sex in front of my apartment. I just left because I wasn't going to walk past that. It was just, and as a man, we naturally get this disgusting, revolting feeling, which is like in our DNA, but you try burying that thinking like, oh, something must be wrong with me to feel this way.
Right.
It's like, no, it's in my DNA of feeling a disgust when I see that. And then they just try normalizing it. And I do feel a little bad for the people. Most of the gay people, most gay men are actually abused as children.
Yeah, that's true.
And no one really wants to talk about that for some reason. They want to say they were born this way. But the truth is, it's actually it's more sad, and it makes me have more empathy towards them.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that a lot of gay men were groomed. And then some of them were just abused. Sometimes it's sexual, sometimes it's just physical. But this doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Oh, it's just disgusting. And we need to like stop pushing it on the kids. People that do this need to have like serious sentences, like probably be taken out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It just needs to be eradicated, not pushed at all. And if people are that way, it should be like secret, underground, shouldn't be talked about, shouldn't be like paraded. You know, like I'm not trying to like chase them down, but it shouldn't be something people are proud of, talking about, shown. It should be completely underground.
I think that is, it's funny that you say that, because that's exactly my position. Because people say, Joel, you're hardcore, you know, you're a Christian nationalist, you know, the Old Testament talks about gay men being stoned and things like that. And what I always respond with is, I think that homosexuality is a sin. That's the biblical position. That said, there is a distinction between sins and crimes.
Yeah.
And one of the determining factors, big determining key factors between something being a sin and being a crime is whether or not it's private versus public. So like, you get drunk and plastered in your home, the Bible would say that that's a sin. But you don't get arrested. It's not a crime.
Yeah.
You're drunk in public behind the wheel of a car. It's not just a sin, it's a crime.
Yeah.
Right? So like two dudes in their home, I think it's a sin. But if I was king for a day, I'm not going to form the gay police to hunt people down in their homes and try to find them in secret. But I would say, you're hosting a public event where you're trying to push this propaganda on children?
Yeah.
That's a crime. Not just a sin, but a crime.
Yeah, because most people that have other weird sexual things, they're not trying to push that on kids. You know, if they keep it to themselves, like whatever, that's like their business.
Why is it always the kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we seeing all these events in nursing homes? How come it always has to be in a school library?
They really are.
And every time it's two dudes who are married, how come they always adopt little boys?
Yes, I've pointed that out before. People, you get attacked that, but they always adopt little boys.
Always boys.
I think to abuse them in most cases.
I think so. And I think we have to be able to acknowledge that. Like, so those things I would want to be crimes. I would say, look, if you're a gay couple, I believe that that's sin. Again, I'm a Christian. I don't know what to tell you. I'm a Christian. I think it's a sin. But you have a private life. You're not pushing it down people's throats. Fine. But you come out publicly and say,
don't kiss in public. Don't hold hands in public.
Yep. But you come out publicly and you want to adopt children and you want to do it like, no.
That's just wrong.
Sorry.
For one, good chance they'll abuse them. But also, do you imagine having like two dads as a man? That would be like humiliating. Like,
kids deserve a mother and a father.
We need it. We're like the balance. They really, truly need both. It's like a child leads, especially when they're young. Like there's certain things, you have kids, right? You can't like do certain needs that sometimes the mom can just like know what they want.
Totally.
It's so weird.
I have 4 daughters. And
they need us too.
And they're all daddy girls. So they love me. But there are certain things where it's just like, okay, like I cannot fix it. They need mom.
We don't even understand what they need. The mom just like, oh, this is what they need.
She just knows.
Like, you're like, how did you know that?
Yep. Because she's mom.
The way they cry, the way they have these like needs that men that we just can't pick up.
Right.
But they actually need the dad, I think, just as much in a different way, for like the sternness, maybe not my girls, it's harder on daughters, but
but definitely with my son, there is sternness. Because he's like, it's funny, like the girls, it's from like a young age, their temptation is like, I'm going to try to be bossy. And, and then my son, he's not super bossy. It's the thing that he struggles with is being soft. And my daughters, I've never, corrected them for being soft.
Yeah, because
right?
it's okay.
Because they're a girl.
No,
but my son,
you have to be harsh on him. Man, it sucks,
I'll have to grab him, not hurt him, but grab him and say, son, I love you, but you have to be a hard man.
Yeah.
The whole world is going to be against you. You cannot be a soft man. You need to be strong, not just for strength's sake, not for you, but your sisters, your mother. You have to be strong.
Protect them. It's like
that's right.
It's the job of a man, to be a good father. You have to be a little harder on your sons. It's the hard reality.
So he's got all his toy guns and a couple of weeks ago, it's funny, but I got I posted something on Twitter about ICE, and I admit it was very pro ICE. I make no apology. I support ICE. I wish they were doing more, but the way that I worded it was a little spicy, to say the least. And so I got all the hate mail, and I got doxxed. Somebody threw it up on Reddit. It went super viral with my address, with the church's address, phone number, all that kind of stuff. And so I had my family stay home that Sunday because I got I think it was 15 or 16 death threats. I'm going to kill you on Sunday. And so of course we did church, and I've got my shield on and stuff like that. And they got the AR, I got everything. But my son really wanted to come. I was like, I'm sorry, man. You got to, he's little. I was like, you got to stay home. But he was so excited. He was
about the family.
As soon as I came home, he was like, Dad, how many bad guys did you kill? I was like 0, and that's good. Exactly. Praise God for that. But my point is I want to foster that in him, not violence, but courage in the sense of we defend, we protect.
I think they purposely attacked masculinity so we wouldn't stand up to them.
That's right.
They don't want strong men saying no, having boundaries, setting things. They tried making us feminine, believing in the following the women. Women hate that too. They want a strong man to lead. Doesn't mean you're like a bully and a dictator. Of course you listen to your wife's opinion and stuff, but it's they want you to lead.
Right.
I think another thing that's been attacked really bad, you might not have seen it as much, but me, I lived in the cities for a lot of years, New York, San Francisco. No one's having kids, Thankfully I had a kid young, but then it's wait, later you start realizing oh, I should have had more kids in between. It's just normal because everyone's doing that, and then they're wound, and all the girls are struggling having kids and they don't know why. It's because they're 35.
Yeah, it's because they're too old. It's because of SSRIs. It's because there's a lot of stuff chemically even that's just making people less fertile. It's a tragedy. But
they make having kids sound like a bad thing when it's just so wonderful. I think it needs to be more normalized. You can bring your kids places and teach your kids manners, of course, but people think they can't bring their kids places and stuff.
Yeah, we go out to eat and it's funny. Sometimes we'll go out to eat and people will pick up our tab, random strangers, because they're just encouraged to see a large family because it's so rare these days. And they're an intact family with a husband and a wife and 5 young children. And the thing they'll always say is they'll be like, your children are so well behaved. And they'll say you're so lucky, as though
it just happened randomly.
It just happened. It's it's look, God's been kind, but I assure you, luck has nothing to do with it. We work our butts off. Mom and I training our children. They're not just well behaved by accident. We have to practice at home.
No, it's obviously it's always going to be a struggle with kids. They're not just going to behave, but you can't just let your kids have no manners and run around. Not obviously have energy to run around sometimes, but it's they have to know when to
the context.
Yeah, when to have respect. You don't want to be overly hard either and have your kids not like you, but it's they have to learn manners. Please, thank you, and it's just so many people just allow their kids to do whatever.
Yep. Is there anybody on the right who's unapologetically Christian that's a friend of yours that shares about Christ with you?
Bryce Mitchell.
Bryce Mitchell.
He's
I haven't heard of him.
He's a fighter. He's pretty well known. He has very controversial remarks. They said he would go fishing with Hitler or something. It's super viral. Okay, right. I was just out at his gym with Russell Brand. You know him? Just met him.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
I don't know Russell as well, but just wonderful guys, and they're
awesome.
Huge in Jesus. We prayed together and did a lot of, he said, I do like Jesus and stuff. So I am talking to all these people.
Cool. Have you, in the last couple of years, as you've been kind of exploring faith, have you visited a church or anything like that?
I have not.
Okay.
Maybe
Do you think you ever will?
I'll come by your church.
I would love to have you come to our church.
Like I like the anti-Zionist. I couldn't do like a Zionist church. That's like
of course not.
To me.
Yeah,
Judeo-Christian values. Like that's just insane.
Yeah, the Judeo-Christian. I'm sure you've seen the memes where it's like, it's like a picture of Christ on the cross, and it's like Christian, and it shows Jesus, and then it shows the nail like going in Judeo.
I've seen that meme. It's
an oxymoron. Jumbo shrimp. Like it's Judeo-Christian doesn't make any sense. Are you? I'm curious. Are you busy this Sunday morning? Because I know you're in town for a little bit. It's 10 a.m. I would love to have you.
I'm not sure if I'm going to be here in San Antonio. So to San Antonio Saturday, but I have your number.
If you're in town,
how long is it? Like an hour, 2 hours?
About an hour and a half. The service?
I'll try to make it. Yeah, it's a little early for me, but that would be cool to do that.
It. 10 a.m.
That would be if I come back from San Antonio.
Okay, let me know. I'll text you and let you know.
I'll see if I can bring Nate Diaz. He's a really big star in fighting. I don't know if you follow fighting, but
I don't. The guys who are running the tech right now are probably yelling to themselves like, Joel, you should know this.
Yeah, they probably know. I'm out here. We're doing some seminars and some business stuff together.
Cool.
So.
That'd be great if both of you guys came. So back to the question, because you didn't quite answer it. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just really am curious. If somebody says, what is the gospel? What does someone have to believe to be a Christian? What is your impression? What do you think?
Well, I used to think having to go to church and stuff, but is it just a belief in God and taking Jesus in your heart? Is that all it is? Is it that simple, or is it more complex?
Good question. So I think going to church is important for a number of reasons, but not to be saved. What I would say is, and what I believe, more importantly, who cares what I would say, but what I think the Bible says is that at the end of the day, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And so are some people worse than others? Yes. There are degrees of sin.
Yes. We all sin, but there's degrees.
We've all sinned, right? So some people are worse. There are serial killers and people who are not serial killers. So certainly there are different degrees of outward manifestations of wickedness and evil, but at the level of the heart, we've all sinned against God. We've all been proud. We've all been arrogant. We've all been selfish. We've all, these kinds of things. And because God is holy, he cannot maintain his perfect justice without compromising his justice and somehow turn a blind eye to our sin. And so in order for sin to be forgiven, but without justice being compromised, it has to be atoned for, paid. And so the idea of Christian faith is that Jesus was that payment. It's not just that he was physically tormented. Tons of martyrs throughout history have died for love of others. If it's just sacrificial love, somebody giving up their life out of love for someone else, you've got Joan of Arc, you've got William Wallace, there are plenty of people who have done that. But the Christian idea is that Jesus is the Son of God, and he didn't just die brutally at the hands of men, but ultimately on the cross, not only is he physically being tortured, but he's actually enduring the wrath of God the Father. That the Father who loved the Son in that moment, that the Son took upon himself our sin, and the Father in his holiness poured out his own wrath on his own Son to satiate all the wrath of God, to punish in full our sin in Christ so that we can be forgiven, but God still upholding his justice. So in other words, the cross is a place where both the justice of God and the mercy of God kiss. Because if God forgave sinners any other way apart from death, right? The Bible says the wages of sin is death. And so the Christian is someone who deserves death because of his sin, but the death has already been endured by someone else.
Jesus.
And so then it's like, well, then how do I lay hold of that? How do I know that if Jesus died, how do I know his death is for me? And it's by grace alone, through faith alone, in Christ alone. So trusting in Jesus, that he is the Son of God, that he lived a perfect life, that he died not just a death as a sacrificial love as an example, but as a substitute. He died as payment in my place, rose from the dead, and I'm trusting in him. My sin was transferred to his account. It was punished in him instead of in me. His righteousness transferred to my account, and now I live forevermore with him. So I'm curious. I'm not going to put you on the spot right now but is that something that you're open to?
No, I am. No, I am
You
open. There was one, you might have just answered it. Something that's always bothers me a little bit is original sin. Like a child born with sin
Right.
doesn't seem right to me. But is that
Explain-
kind of the
explain
point? Is
that,
that kind of
'cause
the
I
point
get it.
of, is that kind of the point of Jesus dying? 'Cause I think if a child is like pure and innocent and say a child has sin, that's one of the few things that I've struggled with.
That's tough.
That is a tough one. That's
like,
one of the toughest ones right there for me.
Super hard. Yeah. So my wife and I, our first child, we have 5 kids with us, but I would say in the technical sense, we have 6 children, 1 in glory. So the first was a miscarriage, but I believe that life begins at the moment of conception, that was a child made in the image of God. But I believe, like I just said, 6 children, 1 in glory. I don't say 6 children, 1 in hell.
Yeah.
So I believe that child is in glory. That said, now Christians debate this, but I believe that the traditional historic Christian view is total depravity. Total depravity does not mean utter depravity. So utter depravity is like you're doing outwardly as much evil as you possibly can. Total depravity means outwardly you may do a host of a ton of good things. You might cure cancer. You might walk a sweet old lady across the street. You might pay your taxes. You might be faithful in your marriage. You might be a good dad. But total depravity is not utter depravity, outward manifestations of constant wickedness all the time, but it means at the level of the heart, that even when I do outwardly good things, that apart from faith in Christ, that all my good deeds, all my righteousness, the Bible says all my righteousness is as filthy rags, meaning that even if I do something good, there's still tainted motives, there's still selfish incentives, there's still the temptation to have some kind of angle to where I can benefit. It's rarely truly a selfless act. So back to the child question, I believe that every single child from conception is born in total depravity. David said, in sin, this is in the Psalms, King David, in sin did my mother conceive me, and in iniquity I was brought forth. And so what he's saying is that from the womb, because of the curse, because sin has entered the world, from the womb, I was afflicted with the curse of sin. But this is the same David who later on, he has a child, one of his children that dies shortly after birth. And when the child dies, he's praying and fasting, asking the Lord when the child's sick, like, please don't let the child die. And then when the child does die, he says, I know now that the child will not be here with me, but I will go to meet with the child. In other words, the implication there is he's assuming that this child is in glory, in heaven. And so this is the same David who says, in my mother's womb, I was conceived in sin. And then his baby child, he's saying, is in glory.
Interesting.
And so I believe that historic Christian position is that that those children who die in utero, infancy, young childhood, 2, 3, young. The Bible doesn't give a specific age, like at this, many years old, but young children,
a couple years old or something.
Yeah, like that. When a young child dies, it's not. And here's the point, and it's important theologically. It's not that a young child goes to heaven. I believe they do, but it's not that they go to heaven because they're not a sinner, because they were born in a state of innocence and they maintain that innocence. They never threw a fit. They never were selfish. Every child is selfish. All they think about is themselves.
You have to teach them not to be selfish. That's
exactly.
A good point.
So they're born in sin, like all human beings are. But I believe that God in his sovereignty, when someone dies in their youth like that, it's not that they are not a sinner, therefore they go to heaven, but I believe that God saves them.
They haven't had their chance to really properly.
Yeah, they haven't had a chance, and I think
it's
God
fair to
knew
say
that.
All this stuff can be interpreted too.
Them.
It's not like one person has the ability to say, "Hey, well, this is what it is." I could read it myself and try to interpret it.
There's a ton of different interpretations. That said, I do think we're not relativists. Like I believe in absolute truth, so there are a ton of different interpretations. Whenever there's contradicting interpretations, we can't all be right.
Yeah.
Now, here's the crazy: it's like, well, you think you're right? Yes. Every position that I have that position because I think I'm right.
Yeah, obviously.
But I could be wrong. I recognize that I could be wrong.
That's important to realize. So, some things I'm pretty strong about, but you have to always be open-minded to, I hate being wrong, but occasionally I was wrong.
Well, you and I both, how many times have we changed?
A lot more than I thought. Yeah, but I do
We've
change
all
my mind.
changed, meaning what? Like we acknowledge, I used to be wrong.
Yeah, Particularly, yeah, like a lot of things you realize, and the more you start looking at it, studying it, like I said earlier, I mentioned like the gay marriage, for example. I thought guys are being crazy, being like, oh, they're going to go for pedophilia next. Like, oh my God, come on.
Right.
They were right.
They were right. They were so right.
They literally started seeing it after that, being like, whoa. I started seeing like a minor attracted person. Like they really are trying to normalize pedophilia.
Yep. Okay, so here at the end, last thing I want to ask is for guys who want to, follow you, listen to you, who maybe aren't familiar with you, what's maybe one or two podcasts that you've done, since you started over the last, you started what, a year ago, 2 years ago?
A year and a half ago.
Okay, so in the last year and a half, what are a couple of the issues or even just one issue that kind of puts you on the map? Things that like, whoa.
Well, I mean, issues. I mean, I talk a lot about Israel, try not to just talk about that, but I also try, branching out and doing like alternative history, talking about spiritual stuff. I don't want to be just talking. I cover fighting and some too.
Right.
I'm doing more politics, but cover some fighting, lots of politics, different issues. At the moment, Israel kind of is the most important issue. So it's like,
yeah, it really is.
I've talked about that the most, but that is kind of been the current issue. We've been talking about it for a few years, but everyone else is, guys like Nick were talking about it long before us, but now everyone's catching up where we were.
Everyone's catching up.
The amount of people are telling me like, oh man.
Well, between Gaza and then Epstein and then now Iran, like even like boomer Zionist grandmas are like, maybe Israel isn't our greatest ally. And it's like, yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, for churches,
yeah,
someone that's anti-Zionist, is there a way to find anti-Zionist churches?
Dude, there should be a website.
Someone needs to create that.
You're absolutely right.
Because that right there, like there's no way I could go to a Zionist church. I think church is important, like you said, though, to build. I think we're losing church is when the West started declining a little bit because it was culture. We brought us together. We judged each other.
Right.
You had to look.
There was accountability.
Put on your good clothes. Like if I was drinking all week, I had to go, you see looking all disheveled on a Sunday.
Right.
Like, oh, I don't want to go out all night, partying. If I have Sunday, I have to do church in the morning. It's like, it held you accountable.
You're right. You're absolutely right. What I've been telling people for a while is I have a lot of friends that are Catholic. I'm Protestant, but a lot of Catholic friends. I think Catholics, both of these are a generalization. So I'm a Protestant, but I'm not a Zionist. There are Catholics who are not globalists. But I think that in a general sense, some of the Catholic guys tend towards globalism. It's like immigration is cool as long as they're Catholic. Oh, it's a Haitian, but don't worry, this is a Catholic Haitian. And then on the Protestant side, they're insufferable Zionist. And so I think like that, like finding some kind of system to say
like a good people can find a church that fits them, and maybe the Zionists want to find that. There needs to be a way to sort out churches.
Tucker should do something.
Yeah, because someone famous like that could do a way, like people could register.
Because I could do that, but I just don't know how many people would use it or hear about it. But somebody big probably needs to come up with some kind of church finder site.
There's probably a lot of people like that do want a community. They do want it, but they want to be around the right people. Like how did your people react when you became anti-Zionist?
Well, I think initially there was a split. Some people liked it and some people left. Stopped following me, whatever. But you know what? I mean, honestly, in a lot of ways, it's less of a left and right issue. It's more of a generational divide. Mm-hmm. So most people, it's been my experience, most people under the age of like 45.
Yeah.
They're
it's
like
the older people, they can't snap it. It's like too brainwashed. They're not willing to change.
And the boomers
people
are frustrating, but at the same time, I'm sympathetic because like the boomers, they're like the most psyoped generation of all of human history. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they were watching Walter Cronkite and it's like, and that's just the facts. It was never just the facts, but like today it's like we have all these alternative news sites and different, you can listen to Jake Shields. You can
guys
listen
like
to
us can be media. That's right.
Right. But back in the day,
wait, I can be a voice.
Like our parents' generation, they had like 3 channels. You know what I mean? So it's like, so you had like the widest reach of media ever, but 0 selection. You got one, and everybody just thought it was true. So I'm sympathetic to a generation of people who for 40 years have been propagandized. That said, even if you've been propagandized for 40 years, when the facts come out, you need to be willing to humble yourself.
I hope I don't become older and not open-minded.
Me too.
And the amount of friends I've had that said they've changed their mind in the last year are crazy. Have you had a similar reaction?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me, I thought you were crazy. Now, people that are hardcore Zionists. So that's it feels good getting a little vindication considering how like attacked we were. Well, that's why I look when I'm fighting with Nick. I'm like, man, look what this guy went through.
Yeah, he went
for
through
all
a lot
these years. That's when I'm like, okay, I need to stop this bullshit.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. All right, where can our listeners follow you?
My YouTube, just Jake Shields, it's Fight Back Podcast. I think putting my name up, Twitter, Jake Shields AJJ, Instagram. I just started a Facebook. I think I got about 40 followers.
Okay, all right, nice.
Basically, I need to get TikTok going.
Yeah,
it's just there's so many platforms.
Well, TikTok is hard, man. We just we were late to the bandwagon, but we just tried to start a TikTok this year, and
I just got banned like a few months ago.
Larry Ellison, Oracle, like 85% of TikTok is owned by a Jew. Yeah. So it's like we're not doing very good on TikTok.
So that's why I got to decide if I want to restart TikTok or just give up on it.
We just kind of gave up. We'll still post a little bit, but it just doesn't get traction. Instagram, like short reels on Instagram, are actually doing pretty well right now.
That's starting to do pretty well. Yeah. Like I hear Facebook has like 3 billion people, but I personally don't use
the biggest site.
So I neglected it. But that's why I'm like, okay, I have all this content anyways. Am I supposed to start putting on Facebook?
Might as well.
I think they're just now hearing about it.
Cool.
Like Twitter, that's where the ideas are shaped, but like that's not where the most people are.
Right. Yep. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, Twitter is, I think, the best major platform. Like there are smaller ones like Gab or whatever, but in terms of major platforms, I think Twitter's the best. But you're right, like
it's where ideas are fought and
it's
shaped.
Still kind of
but then more people are on Facebook.
Correct.
So the ideas are fought there, but then they seep to Facebook, Instagram, other places.
Right. It's kind of like Twitter is like 4chan and then Facebook.
So it's important for people to be there fighting for the ideas, the battle there, but
upstream.
But there's more.
Correct.
Like it's all over Facebook. The stuff we're talking about is all over Facebook now, Instagram. It's crazy.
Yep, you're right. Well, Jake Shields, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Great meeting you.
Yeah, me too.
Hey guys, I'm demonetized everywhere. So if you want to support me and the podcast, go to fightbackpodcast.com and you can buy some cool merch like the shirt I'm wearing now.